The man who watched her closely said that her planned actions happened slowly over time. For Prince William, this wasn't just a story. It was an important moment in his understanding. All his life, he had heard unclear rumors and read unbelievable stories in the news, but this time was different. It was a real experience that felt very close to home. The person sharing the story wasn't a stranger. He had actually lived through it all. He wasn't looking for revenge or attention, just sharing what he saw firsthand. Before the fame and problems, it was just Camilla and Andrew. Their love story started way before they became part of royalty. Camilla was a charming young woman, and Andrew was a confident army officer. They first met at a horse game in the 1960s. The air around them was filled with the smell of fancy leather, fresh grass, and champagne. It was the perfect place for love stories to start with laughter and end with a lasting memory. Camilla didn't fit in with the crowd because she was special. She had a loud laugh, bold jokes, and a relaxed way of standing that didn't match the fancy people she was around. But that specialness made her attractive and interesting to Andrew. He liked her energy, and they quickly became a couple that couldn't be separated. They were always happy and became what everyone talked about in society. When Andrew and Camilla got married, people thought it was exciting and fun. Andrew had connections to royalty, while Camilla came from the countryside. As a couple, they seemed like a perfect match, mixing old traditions with new ideas. They moved into Bolhide Manor, a beautiful house with big windows, pretty gardens, and family pictures. But the reality inside their home wasn't as perfect as it looked from the outside. Andrew admitted his mistakes. He knew that he wasn't perfect, but he believed that the main problem wasn't their fights or living apart. It came from her growing desire for something bigger. She wasn't looking for love or change, but rather wanting to expand her reach. She wanted more influence, control, and freedom to live her life however she wanted. Charles came into the picture, slowly, not suddenly or with drama, but bit by bit. It was like watching a shadow slowly move across the floor. There were long phone calls, secret meetings, and more trips to London. It wasn't a surprise to anyone, as everyone knew that Charles and Camilla had known each other for a long time, but Andrew believed that this time was different. Their connection had grown in a way that went beyond just feelings. It was about their shared future together. He said that Camilla didn't just fall in love with a prince, but she connected with him on a deep level. Their marriage was seen as a bridge by Andrew, a path she walked across rather than a place she stayed. By the time he realized this, she had already moved on. He was surprised not only by the change in her feelings, but also by the work she was doing in secret. As their relationship got worse, he noticed that Camilla was building a strong foundation. For herself, she wasn't just making plans for what might happen. She was creating a complete plan, including money, legal stuff, and organization. She did all of this without anyone noticing through smart and sneaky actions. She went in through the back doors, charity groups, saving old buildings, taking care of properties, helping the community, starting organizations. She began creating a complicated network that even smart money people would have trouble figuring out. Andrew thought that it was important to not only protect herself, but also to protect Charles. This meant keeping assets safe, changing old agreements, and moving things around in a way that couldn't be questioned. She managed to do all of this without breaking any rules, which made it even more impressive. Everything she did was legal, and done quietly through a series of smart choices that eventually created a situation that couldn't be ignored. Years after rumors started going around, money checkers from the Royal Financial Department found something scary that got William's attention. Every year, over $5 million was sent to Camilla's relatives in different ways, like school money, housing, help, consulting jobs with strange companies, and quiet roles in unknown organizations. The money didn't just suddenly show up in accounts. It came in slowly and steadily over time. It looked like a nice gesture from a woman helping her family. But when William's team looked closer, it seemed more like a system designed to reward loyalty instead of skill. This system didn't get attention in public, but worked behind the scenes. This made people look at Camilla's actions in a new way. In public, she seemed graceful and quiet, seen as a helpful presence. But inside the palace, there was a feeling that something was wrong. Conversations were held in whispers, and tension filled the air. Suspicion hung around as hands stopped over documents and files were looked at multiple times. The feeling of worry kept getting stronger. William, who was raised to think about all sides and not make quick decisions, was faced with something he couldn't ignore. The man's calm and sure voice stayed in William's mind, convincing him that what he heard was definitely true. even without any proof. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't luck. This was a planned move. Every item, every money transfer, every decision mattered. For the first time, William understood that the crown wasn't just worn on someone's head, but also controlled by those who knew how to work things from behind the scenes. And it looked like Camilla had been making smart moves all along. The day the palace changed forever. Prince William's view changed when he heard the recording. The noise was no longer just background sound. It was real information that marked the beginning of something more serious for him. Instead of emotional upset, he was faced with cold, hard facts, documents, numbers, and information that showed a worrying picture. There was nothing illegal or criminal, but something still felt wrong to William, especially thinking about his future job as king. In the peaceful palace, where traditions usually stop changes, the atmosphere started to feel tense. William carefully looked through the documents many times, feeling more worried each time. The files had names, money transfers, charity donations, and secret payments. There were clear patterns that couldn't be easily explained, even though it wasn't said directly. The proof showed that Queen Camilla's relatives had been getting money help using palace resources, though not illegally, but secretly. People had different opinions within the group. The experienced advisors said to wait it out, as they had seen scandals and survived worse situations before. They believed staying quiet was the best thing to do, but the younger members disagreed. They weren't influenced by the tradition of keeping secrets. They valued honesty and taking responsibility. They felt that staying quiet would make it seem like they agreed with it, which wasn't okay. William wasn't very talkative. Instead, he listened carefully, hearing both sides. One morning, as the sun was coming up, he surprised people by not responding with anger or fighting. He called for a private meeting before the sun had even come up. With only a few special people there, his trusted helpers, lawyers, money experts, and longtime workers, this meeting was kept secret, with no cameras, no information getting out, and no interruptions. It was a serious and quiet discussion held behind closed doors. In the middle of the situation, there was a hard question. Should the royal family keep supporting something that no longer matched their beliefs? It wasn't just about money, but also about what they stood for. They weren't trying to hurt anyone, but rather to set limits in a gentle but strong way. Throughout the whole thing, Catherine stayed by his side. Even though she was still getting better from being sick, she was there to support him. She didn't push him or give orders, but her being there was comforting and powerful. She gently gave one piece of advice, which William accepted and understood, though he already knew what he wanted to do. That night, he had trouble sleeping. Walked through the palace hallways by himself, thinking hard. The quiet of the night surrounded him, but his mind was busy. He looked at the papers again, stopping at the same places. He wasn't just thinking as a son, but as a future king. By the next morning, he was ready. Big announcements or angry speeches weren't made. Instead, a simple piece of paper was used. It was short, clear, and final. His signature at the bottom made it official. From that day on, all money help to Queen Camilla's extended family would stop. This meant no more payments, quiet allowances from old charities, or indirect support from distant trust funds. The secret system that had been working for years was permanently turned off. Time seemed to stop inside the palace. The mood suddenly changed. Advisors looked worriedly at each other. Workers, who had been there for a long time, paused, not knowing what to do next. Even Camilla's closest helpers were shocked. There was no warning. Nobody was ready. The news people acted fast. As soon as the news got out, headlines were everywhere. William cuts ties with the royal family. Fight among royals gets bigger. Camilla's relatives were left out. People all over the country responded quickly. Some praised William for his courage, for standing up and dealing with what many believed should have been handled earlier. Others weren't sure. They worried about what might happen and possible bad results. Some saw it as the start of a split that might never be fixed. The palace has always depended on everyone getting along. What happens when that unity breaks apart? Camilla didn't answer right away and stayed quiet. But her silence didn't mean she gave up. Her lawyers got involved soon after. They wrote public statements and made arguments back, saying some details were misleading and others were completely false. They asked for understanding, background information, and fairness. But it was too late. The story was already written. The damage was done. Many believed it wasn't Camilla who was wrong, but William for bringing it into the open. It was dangerous, it was bold, and it couldn't be taken back. There was no loud fighting, No arguments heard in the palace, no doors being slammed shut, but anyone who was paying attention could feel it. Something had changed. The atmosphere in the palace became colder. Conversations became tense. Doors that used to be open stayed closed. People who used to be friendly with each other now only nodded from far away. The royal family, once seen as united, now seemed split apart. King Charles was facing a hard situation. He tried to show his support for both his wife and his son in public. But privately, things were more complicated. He loved both William and Camilla deeply. Their relationships meant everything to him. Now he was stuck between the two, and struggling to keep them both close. Efforts were made quietly to fix the situation, including gentle invitations and messages sent through helpers. But none worked. William kept his distance while Camilla became more private. The lack of talking between them wasn't just uncomfortable, but done on purpose. Camilla started canceling events she had agreed to go to. Those events were taken off her schedule. Her happy public image started to fade away. But her silence didn't mean she was weak. Instead, she was carefully planning. She held meetings, looked at legal matters, and made plans privately within the palace walls. She wasn't fighting in public battles, but rather making plans behind closed doors. According to people who knew her well, she wasn't just hurt, but mostly angry. Her anger wasn't loud or wild, but instead cold and sharp disappointment. She saw William's actions as betrayal, not just personally, but also against the institution. The royal family had always dealt with their problems quietly and privately, but William's actions went against this tradition. Everyone's attention was on what was happening. Quiet conversations could be heard throughout the palace. People wondered if this was the start of something big. They wondered if others would also support William. They questioned if the institution could survive a public disagreement between the future king and the queen. These were questions that no one could answer. The damage wasn't only emotional, it also affected the structure. Workers started choosing different sides. Colleagues who had been friends for a long time now had trouble trusting each other. The feeling during meetings became more cold. Making decisions took longer. Even though no words were spoken, there was always tension hiding just underneath. William stayed strong and didn't change his plans. He went to events, but his behavior was different, quieter, and more serious. The decision he made felt heavy on him, but he didn't feel sorry about it. He didn't make a quick decision. He didn't act to get revenge. He acted because of what he believed. When that belief was questioned, he couldn't ignore it. He drew a line. Once that line was crossed, there was no going back. The palace kept feeling aftershocks. Reporters made guesses. Former workers gossiped. Every little action was watched, but nobody really knew what would happen next. Despite all the watching, the real change had already happened. It wasn't in public or in writing. It was done privately, where a future king quietly said, "That's enough." And that silent choice written on one piece of paper changed the royal family's future. The royal split. What was once thought to be very strong was now slowly breaking apart. It wasn't with loud arguments or big announcements, but in the quiet moments where trust was lost. The strong connection that used to protect the royal family was starting to weaken. Despite it all, Prince William stayed the same. He didn't yell or hide. He kept up with his duties day after day, showing the same calm strength to the public. But inside the palace, everything had changed. It all started with one choice. At first meant to be kept within the family as a private matter handled quietly. But in the world of royalty, privacy doesn't last long. Before they knew it, that first decision became a much bigger problem. News headlines exploded, TVs buzzed with updates, and the internet was buzzing with talk. Suddenly, a scandal that was once kept within royal circles spread around the world. The information spread quickly throughout the Commonwealth. After leaving the palace, the surprise wasn't just related to money or influence, but went deeper than that. It was a matter of trust, history, and whether the crown, which had been passed down for centuries, still belonged in modern times. In Australia, leaders didn't wait to discuss it. There had been some private talks for years about the role of the monarchy in the country. But now these conversations were happening out in the open. In Parliament, well-respected people brought up the issue. They were wondering if it was time to break away from the British crown. They wanted to know why a foreign royal family still had so much control over a nation trying to be independent. These questions had been around for a while, but now they wanted answers. Canada quickly did the same thing. Their conversations sounded very similar. Many started questioning why they still used royal symbols in everyday things, like their money, laws, and children's stories. For some, seeing the Queen's face on their money wasn't just a normal thing anymore. It was a reminder of something that seemed out of place. The idea of change, once seen as something far away, now felt urgent and close. In the Caribbean, countries like Jamaica and St. Vincent, which have old connections to Britain, began demanding independence loudly. Their leaders and citizens felt ignored and wanted to control their own future. The royal scandal gave them the push they needed to make their voices heard. In the United Kingdom, the reaction was strong, but different. The press was very aggressive in their coverage. They weren't just looking for quotes or statements. They wanted everything: leaked documents, money records, secret sources, and rumors from inside the palace were constantly in the news. Queen Camilla, who was once praised for her strength, was now in the middle of the controversy. But this time, it wasn't about romantic relationships or past scandals. It was about secret money, accounts in foreign countries, and hidden trust funds. She had faced criticism from the public before, but this time it felt more serious. The questions were harder, and the answers weren't as easy. Even her supporters were struggling to quiet the growing noise. It wasn't just casual talk anymore. The situation had become serious, complicated, and was quickly spreading. Polls started to show a worrying trend. Trust in the monarchy was getting weaker. It didn't disappear right away, but slowly got worse. Over time, just like an old painting losing its bright colors bit by bit. In today's world, where honesty and openness are important, the palace's lack of communication seemed more like hiding than being elegant. Inside the palace gates, there was a different kind of trouble growing. Not loud, but still strong. This trouble wasn't caused by reporters or public opinion, but by important decisions that had serious results. Each choice could make a big impact. 3 different groups formed within the royal family and their advisors. The first group believed that complete honesty was the best way moving forward. They wanted to reveal all information, open up their records, and show the world the whole truth. They understood that it would be hard and bring more attention, but they thought it would stop all the guessing. The situation had moved beyond being just a family problem. It was now a test on a national and even worldwide level to see if the monarchy could handle being completely accountable. The second group had a different plan. They aimed for peace, without public attention. They suggested private meetings between Prince William, King Charles, and Camilla V. They wanted to avoid interviews and news involvement, hoping the 3 of them could solve their problems in private. They thought a solution could be found through talking, money adjustments, and public promises to make things better. This group believed that the fight could still be solved through good communication between the main people involved. Then, a third group appeared. These were the oldest and most traditional people. They believed in a plan of doing nothing. They preferred not to make any comments or take any actions. Their approach was to simply wait and let the news cycle move on. They believed that the power of the monarchy came from patience. They pointed out that the monarchy had survived wars, scandals, and political problems before. They questioned why there was a need to change strategies now, and why they should give in to pressure. But all of these choices were hard. Each decision came with consequences. Each action could separate the family even more. At the center of it all was King Charles, who found himself in a new level of difficulty. If he decided to support Camilla, he might push William away even more. William, who represented the future of the monarchy, could feel left out. On the other hand, if Charles supported William, it could hurt Camilla deeply after all the support she had given him during hard times. There was no clear answer to the difficult choice. All the options seemed to lead to pain. With more people sharing their opinions in the palace, one question stood out. Was it still possible to find a way to go back? For hundreds of years, the British monarchy has survived by being flexible and able to change. It has adapted and evolved to stay important. But now, things are different. It's not just about how they look. It's about who they are. It's about whether the royal family still represents values that people support. The whole world wasn't only curious, but also determined. Leaders, citizens, and former friends were all wondering the same thing. Will the crown still matter tomorrow, if it doesn't make changes now? As Prince William continued with his duties, Charles stayed quiet, and Camilla dealt with challenges. It became clear that the story wasn't over yet. Whatever happened next would have a big impact on the monarchy and its future. When smiles disappear with a strained relationship. For years, people around the world have been interested in the British royal family. They have watched the smiles, waves, and carefully chosen words that paint a picture of unity. But not all relationships within the royal family are smooth. The relationship between Prince William and Queen Camilla has always been quietly tense. It's not a public fight, but more of a long-lasting, silent tension filled with cold looks and unspoken feelings. This tension has roots that go back further than many people know. Prince William was a young boy when his life started to change in ways that were confusing to him. He had a loving mother, Princess Diana, who was not only caring towards her sons, but also towards everyone around her. But even as a little kid, William could see things that others couldn't. He could see the sadness in his mother's eyes, and the loneliness that she tried to hide. He also noticed the changes in her smile, and the times when her laughter didn't seem real. And in the middle of all of this, there was Camilla. At first, Camilla was just a name mentioned quietly in the background. William heard about her, and his mother would get quiet whenever her name came up. But as he got older, the whispers about Camilla became more important. He started to understand why her name mattered. He learned about who she was, what she meant to his father, and the emotional pain she had caused his mother. Even after Diana died, the sadness stayed. As time went on, the emotional hurt never fully went away. William loved his mother's memory very much. He remembered her as the one who tucked him in at night and gave words of comfort when he was feeling sad. When Camilla joined the family, it felt like a painful reminder of his past. They kept up a polite act in front of others. During public events, Camilla and William would be photographed together, smiling and saying brief words. But there was an underlying feeling of coldness between them behind closed doors. It wasn't obvious or dramatic, but rather subtle, distant, and careful. William wasn't one to make a scene, but he also didn't open up his heart. He kept a respectful distance, always being measured and controlled. Camilla was careful and aware of the situation she was in. She knew that Princess Diana held a special place in the hearts of her stepsons. Despite being called queen, she never felt like a real grandmother to the boys. Her relationship with Harry was more relaxed. But with William, there was a clear wall between them. As William got older and started to have more responsibilities as a royal, his role in the family became clearer. He was no longer just a prince, but the future king, which brought lots of pressure. This pressure came with expectations, duties, and the challenge of working with people he might not always agree with. Camilla was now not only a family member, but also part of the royal institution, making things more complicated. Every time they had a meeting or event in public, they had to practice and prepare carefully. They had to make sure their smiles looked real to stop any rumors, and their eye contact had to seem friendly for the cameras. But close friends of the family could sense the stress. They could feel it in the quiet moments during conversations, in the way William's face changed when Camilla walked in, and in how he made sure not to stand too close to her for too long. Still, William was always careful in his communication. He didn't let his personal feelings interfere with his public duties. But he also didn't do more than what was required when talking with her. He didn't publicly say warm birthday wishes or praise her role in glowing terms. He simply did his duties, without any extra gestures. When William married Catherine, things got more complicated. His family was getting bigger, and he was very careful to protect them. His kids and wife were his main focus, while Camilla was always kept at a distance. William didn't allow anyone who could disturb the peace he had created. He was worried about any signs of trouble or mentions of the past, knowing the damage it could cause to a family. Catherine, who always stayed calm and graceful, tried to lessen the distance between them, but she couldn't completely close the gap. She supported her husband's decision to stay quiet, because she understood what could happen if past silence continued to grow. Over time, the family tried to appear united. They still made public appearances and took photos together, sharing smiles. But behind the act, the connection between William and Camilla was fragile. It wasn't hatred or rage, but rather a mix of disappointment, leftover hurt, and subtle distrust. Over time, the leadership positions changed. Camilla became more prominent, while William got closer to becoming king. The day Prince William chose truth over tradition, Prince William stayed strong and firm throughout the controversy. Despite all the opinions swirling around him, he remained calm and composed. His behavior showed no signs of doubt or fear. While others argued, and the public anxiously waited for updates, William stayed determined. In his silent composure, something changed. Many watchers saw this as the moment he evolved from just someone waiting to be king, to a real leader. Someone who no longer just followed instructions, but took control of his future. He didn't use historical context to justify his decisions. He didn't blame tradition for hiding the truth. He stood by himself, confident, strong, and unique. Within the palace, not everyone supported him. Some were worried that he had gone too far. There were whispers that William had damaged the foundation of the crown. His bold actions had worn away a sacred element, the strong family connection that kept the monarchy together. The focus had shifted from tradition to loyalty. A few people inside the palace feared that William had put honesty over harmony. But some people saw the situation differently. They thought that he had stopped a harmful pattern. They also spoke in quiet voices, but with hope. To them, William wasn't causing destruction, but rather freedom. The royal family had been keeping secrets for too long, keeping their public image, while problems got worse in private. But now, a man was challenging the way things were. He was a future king who believed in openness over tradition. No matter what you thought, it was clear that William's decision came with consequences. Soon, there were rumors spreading around. Prince William and King Charles were barely talking to each other. When they did talk, they were brief and not as friendly as before. It wasn't obvious, but it was clear. Camilla, who used to be the center of family gatherings, started keeping to herself. She wasn't as involved as she used to be. Even the palace workers, who were known for their loyalty and quiet service, started taking sides. Some supported William, admiring his bravery. Others stuck to the traditional ways, unsure of what would come from this sudden change. Secret meetings were happening in private. People were giving each other intense looks in the hallways. Former colleagues were now picking sides. The palace was no longer a peaceful place. It felt unstable and divided. William continued, moving forward without looking back, as he had already made up his mind. He had clearly separated the past from the future, despite the potentially high cost. He was determined not to change his decision. Some people believed he was capable of leading the monarchy into a more realistic era, as people no longer believed in fairy tales but wanted the truth. Others warned that he underestimated how fragile the institution was. They feared that by revealing certain facts, he could cause more harm than he intended. The world outside the palace was eagerly watching, instead of just reading applause. Big celebrations are amazing, but at the center of all the fancy stuff is one simple idea: helping people. It all started with one talk and ended with royal money being taken away. Camilla's ex-husband said way too much, telling secrets nobody expected to hear. Prince William didn't wait around. He made one choice that was quick and cold: no more money for her family. What did he find out? And why did it change everything? Behind the palace walls, the drama was just getting started. Let's tell you the real story. The secret recording that changed everything. The day at Kensington Palace started like any normal day, with sunshine coming through the big windows and workers getting ready for work. But something felt different in the air. The usual peaceful feeling was gone, and instead there was worry everywhere. People were whispering and asking quick questions, and the morning meetings that usually happened were skipped. Something shocking had happened that nobody saw coming. The moment Prince William signed one piece of paper, everything went crazy. The palace became a mess as phones started ringing, and helpers were called in right away. Important workers were pulled into emergency meetings before they could even drink their morning coffee. Questions about what was happening spread through the hallways like water flooding in. By lunchtime, everyone in the royal palace knew what happened. Prince William had done something brave and shocking. He completely stopped all money going from the royal family to Queen Camilla's relatives. There were no hints or slow changes, just a sudden and complete stop. Camilla's family had been getting royal help secretly for many years, hidden in sneaky ways, like special bank accounts, fake job titles, and money gifts. Everything had been set up quietly, not breaking any rules, but also not telling anyone about it. Now, everything was gone. The news people quickly found out what happened. Big news companies started writing crazy headlines. Fight in the royal family discovered Prince William stops helping Camilla's family. Big trouble in the monarchy. People outside the palace could only guess what was happening. Inside, everyone was getting scared. The royal workers were really confused about everything. Secret talks were happening between helpers. Important advisors were having private meetings. And everyone was wondering the same thing. Was this happening because of money, power, or maybe something even bigger? Prince William decided to stay quiet, not giving any explanation or reasons for what he did. Instead, he kept going with a strong feeling that even the people closest to him thought was scary. Some people thought he seemed mean, while others thought he seemed calm. But the people who really knew him understood that this wasn't a random choice or just a quick reaction. It was a careful decision caused by something very personal. Whatever that reason was, it had really changed how he saw everything. The reason for the change was shown in a recording. It had one voice admitting something important. This private message was never supposed to be shared outside of the family files. Once it got out, there was no way to fix the damage. The voice on the recording belonged to Andrew Parker Bowles, who was Camilla's ex-husband. The interview wasn't fancy, with no special lights or written words, just a man at home recording a message for his kids. He wanted to leave behind his thoughts, experiences, and maybe some smart advice. There was no anger in his voice, just honest tiredness. He spoke quietly, stopping sometimes to think about his words carefully. He made up wild and fake stories about the royal family, which made her scared and worried. He talked about his life, his marriage, and the person who was always the most important in it all, Camilla. He wasn't trying to start drama with his words. He spoke calmly and sadly. But there was something powerful underneath. He described his marriage as being torn apart, slowly and on purpose. Not just as a love that was lost. He didn't say mean things about Camilla, or blame her directly, but as he talked, a picture started to form. A picture of Camilla as more than just an ex-wife or queen was shown. Andrew talked about moments that people had missed before, like decisions, daily habits, and ways of acting. He pointed out how Camilla dealt with money, took control of personal things in sneaky ways, and made friends with powerful people. Andrew also mentioned how she acted perfectly in social situations, always leaving with something she gained, even though there weren't any shocking secrets. The overall feeling was that Camilla wasn't someone who just let things happen to her. Instead, she actively shaped her life with careful planning and grace. It looked like everything was set up ahead of time. The recording wasn't supposed to be heard by regular people, but somehow, it got shared. There are different ideas about how it got out, like being accidentally uploaded to a family cloud storage, or purposely leaked by someone. Once it was out there, it quickly spread among a small group of people before reaching bigger audiences through private messages and online groups. Eventually, it got to Prince William, the person it was never meant for. He quietly listened to the entire recording without stopping or showing any feelings. He sat silently as a man who was no longer famous talked about the woman now sitting next to his father. William wasn't just uncomfortable, he was also shocked by the picture that Andrew painted. The picture didn't blame William, but it showed something that made him see things in a completely new way. This discovery was powerful enough to totally change William's view of everything he thought he knew. He learned that Andrew felt like he was being replaced, not only as a husband, but as someone dependable. William learned about sneaky plans and quiet actions happening behind the scenes. He also heard about decisions that didn't seem like betrayal at first, but ended up pushing one life out while another took its place. William didn't need direct blame or emotional outbursts. What he wanted was honesty, and he found it in a private recording. It made clear things that were confusing before. It gave new understanding about past experiences, about choices made by the family, and about behaviors William had missed before. Now, he couldn't ignore them. This wasn't just about Camilla, it was about the monarchy, about his future, about what kind of king he wanted to be, and the kind of legacy he refused to continue. William decided to take strong action without asking anyone first. He cut off all money connections with Camilla's family, including house repairs, school money, and job payments. This sent a clear message that he was setting limits. The results happened fast in the palace. Advisors ran around in panic because they were surprised and didn't know what was happening. Meanwhile, outside, the news was full of different theories and guesses. People wondered if it was revenge, a change in the royal family order, or a sneaky move for power. But the real truth was hidden from most people, known only by a few special individuals. Even among those people, no one dared to talk about the recording out loud, as it had become the biggest secret in a scandal involving the royal family. William never talked about it in public. He didn't need to. His actions clearly showed what he thought. His quiet behavior became the loudest voice in the palace. And as the royal family moved forward, everything felt different. Despite all the attention-grabbing news stories, there is one simple truth that stays clear. Big changes can happen quietly. They don't always come with loud protests, but instead, with small actions like signing a paper or choosing to stay quiet. It can be a moment when someone who never thought their voice mattered speaks up, and a person who has had enough finally takes action. Because of this, everything is different now. The hidden network behind the crown. The person telling secrets wasn't a reporter, a gossip newspaper, or someone nobody knew. It was actually someone with lots of influence who used to live near her and watched her during private times when nobody else was around. His voice was gentle and calm, not desperate or angry. but had a sense of quiet certainty that made it hard to ignore his story. William felt a peace that affected him more than anything he read in the news. There were no numbers, papers, or bank records given to him as proof. All he had was a spoken story from someone who saw and remembered every detail of what happened. This wasn't a story about someone being betrayed or involved in a loud scandal. Instead, it was a tale of planning and peaceful ambition growing slowly over time, like ivy climbing up palace walls. The man believed that she had not only made friends with others, but had also created a system. She did more than just make friends, she made partnerships. Instead of just owning houses, she connected them into bigger structures. When it came to spending money, she did it in such a smart way, using layers so thin that even smart people would have to look twice to notice it. In the middle of everything was Camilla. Camilla was often seen as the woman in the background, smiling and going to events. She carried herself with grace and charm, but underneath was a smart mind.